Welcome, everyone. How about a round of applause? I think that's where we ought to start for Jane Bate. Jane, where are you? I got to tell you something. She's a real crusader. The incredible lady organized tonight's event. I've been at least three or four other events that she's put together over the last couple of years, and basically she's paid for them. You know, your contributions have helped, but she's paid for them, and I've never seen anybody go in pocket like she has. Now, we've got a couple other people here that I want to recognize. Marie Zier. I got to tell you a little story about Marie. Marie is kind of Jane's counterpart because she runs an ACT chapter on Long Island. She really does spearhead the counter-jihad movement on Long Island, and she's done just an incredible job. So anyway, she had an event 2 nights ago, and Katie Hopkins spoke. Well, Katie stayed with her, I believe, last night, and Marie just felt obligated to ride on the boat to Bridgeport from Port Jefferson this afternoon. When we got her over here, we kidnapped her and wouldn't let her go home. So the poor lady is here, and I think the biggest problem she has, what was troubling her, was she had no makeup, she had no toothbrush, she had nothing, no clothes or anything to get home, but she's here. So when you get a chance, just meet her because, I don't know, she's a dynamo just like Jane. Next, I want to recognize Eric Martin for traveling all the way up from the great state of Texas to be in attendance. Come on, Eric, stand up, will ya? I got to tell you something. If that man could not have gotten an airline ticket, he would have walked, because he would do anything to come to meet Katie. And I hope everybody here has that opportunity this evening. He's been on the front lines combating hate and genocide since his college days at Edinburgh University in Scotland. And he was involved with the Biafra Wars. He's just, I attended an event with Bob Spencer, who everybody here knows, and a couple other people. We spoke down in Dallas. And that event was to wake up the Christian community as to the genocide that's taken place around the world, in particular the genocide against black Christians. Unfortunately, there were more Muslims in attendance than there were Christians at that event. But I think, if anything else, that underscores the problem that we're suffering in this country right now. My name's Jeff Epstein, and I have dedicated the last 16 years of my life to country, both through educational initiatives and counterterrorism investigations. Most of you know I got out of counterterrorism in the summer of 2016. But Jane needed me. She asked me to come, and I'll never turn anybody down because I have an 18-year-old child. She just graduated from high school. She's heading off to college. If we don't do our part and fight for these kids, they're going to be in a really compromised position to fight for themselves. So, like I said, that's why I'm here. I'm fighting for every one of your children, for you, for your neighbors, for our fellow Americans. And we need all of you to step up to the plate and get the word out. The existential threats facing our homeland against ourselves and our loved ones have grown geometrically since 9/11. Over 35,191 terrorist attacks have been logged since that infamous day. Think about it. All involving the I word, shh, right? You could attest to that one, Katie. You say anything in Great Britain today, and they're going to nail you. You're going to be incarcerated. In its quest for world domination, Islam, oops, I said it, is rapidly expanding its political influence, both here and abroad. The preeminent operating wings of the terrorist Muslim Brotherhood, and I mean that, terrorist Muslim Brotherhood, are now grooming thousands of their member soldiers, to run for political offices across the country. The last email I got, they have 2,500 of them they're trying to get into offices from here to the West Coast. The damage of which may prove insurmountable. Just consider what one or two have done so far to change the nature of Congress in Washington. During his reign, Hussein Obama airlifted over 50,000 Somali Muslims to America for resettlement in Minnesota alone, a large contingent of which reside in the 5th Congressional District, the same district that Representative Ilhan Omar, the same district that sent her to Washington, the same district that was identified by the FBI as being America's leading terrorist recruiting center. Think about what that means. To show her appreciation for America's naive generosity, Omar refers to the United States as a genocidal force for evil that globally violates human rights. Among other things, she has called for defunding DHS, that's the Department of Homeland Security, and the abolishment of ICE. Folks, even an average 5th grader should be able to connect those dots, right? So where are our fellow Americans? Where's the outrage? Their intentions are obvious. Islam divides the world into two regions. Dar al-Islam, land of Islam, which is governed under Sharia law. I'm sure everybody knows what that is. And Dar al-Harb, the land of war, which is targeted for Islamic conquest. That's where we live. They're simply paving the way to seize control of the United States from within, not by jihad or holy war, and jihad is holy war. It's nothing but holy war. But through dawah, which is the nonviolent infiltration leading to submission and surrender to Allah. Widespread violence usually manifests after Muslim populations hit critical mass, historically around 16 to 17%. One must only take them at their words, right? They're telling us what they intend to do. As revealed by discovery proceedings from the Dallas-based Holy Land Foundation trial, the Terrorist Muslim Brotherhood's strategic plan for America reads, and I'm going to read this to you word for word. The Ikhwan, or Muslim Brotherhood, must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within. In sabotaging its miserable house by their hands, meaning our own hands, because we're helping them along, in the hands of the believers, meaning their followers, so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Wasn't there a time in America when seditious intentions of this nature weren't tolerated? And they were actually considered as pathways to the gallows? Are we that naive, ignorant, and vulnerable? And we're not committing suicide? Words matter, folks. The OIC-controlled United Nations is striving to outlaw all speech in condemnation of Islam. Those of us who continue to exercise our First Amendment rights are already being labeled as racist and Islamophobes. First off, Islam isn't a race. How could it possibly be a race? There are Muslim cultures all over the world, from the Philippines to Saudi Arabia, even down in South America, and of course, they're manifesting on U.S. soil. Secondly, the term Islamophobia was coined by the Terrorist Muslim Brotherhood to undermine legitimate resistance to push back against the spreading of Sharia law. In Arabic, the term for such resistance is fitna, a capital offense under Islam, punishable by death. So, when somebody calls you an Islamophobic, be proud because you're a patriot and you're supporting our constitutional republic and you're protecting your children against the onslaught. The question remains as to whether we will be victorious in the long run. Our struggle has become far more challenging due to the political climate, changing demographics, and widespread apathy, which I've been talking about. Let me remind you that when Benjamin Franklin emerged from the Constitutional Convention of 1787, he was queried as to what form of government was chosen. His response was simple and to the point: a republic, if you can keep it. We're currently failing in that regard. In honor of Katie Hopkins, her visit here, let me share one of my favorite quotes from Winston Churchill, and I want you to think about this. If you will not fight for right when you could easily win without bloodshed, if you will not fight when your victory is sure and not too costly, you may come to the moment when you will have to fight with all the odds against you and only a precarious chance of survival. There may even be a worse case. You may have to fight when there is no hope for victory, because it's better to perish than to live as slaves. Think about it. Those are the words of our founding fathers. We were having a conversation, following dinner when I was driving up here today, and just considering what's happening. But to me, I think about all the American soldiers that died from the very founding of our country, that are laying in graves all over the United States and throughout Europe and off the beaches of Normandy. They gave their blood. They died. They sacrificed their lives so we could be free. Don't we owe them something for that? Well, I've got a bit of a surprise in store for everyone this evening. One of my colleagues, a pioneer in the counter-jihad movement, is present and will be addressing the audience before Katie takes the stage. Dr. Andrew Bostom, MD, is an associate professor of family medicine research at the Warren Alpert Medical School of Brown University. It's kind of rare to find a conservative at Brown University. He can attest to that. Dr. Bostom has also been studying important aspects of Islamic doctrine and history for the past 17 years. He is author of the highly acclaimed these books: The Legacy of Jihad, The Legacy of Islamic Anti-Semitism, and Shariah versus Freedom. He also produced the first annotated full English translation of Haj Amin al-Husseini's 1937 fatwa against the Jews, published as the Mufti's Islamic Jew Hatred, What the Nazis Learned from the Muslim Pope. Let me just shed some light on that. And Andrew is free to correct me if he would like. But the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, who I just mentioned, actually provided 2 SS divisions to Hitler during World War II. He was the one that was reputed to have planted the seed for the final solution in Hitler's ear. And the way I was told it, he said, he basically told his friend Adolf that the Turks got away with it, with the genocide against the Armenians. You'll get away with the next genocide against the Jewish people because there won't be an outcry. His most recent book is Iran's Final Solution for Israel. Dr. Bostom has published numerous articles and commentaries on Islam in Eretz Shiva, the New York Post, Washington Times, the New York Daily News, National Review Online, The American Thinker, Pajamas Media, FrontPageMagazine.com, and other print and online publications. Without further delay, Doc, how about taking the podium here?
Thank you very much. It's really an honor to serve, at least in some way, as an introductory speaker before Katie speaks, because she's a truly remarkable person. I had the pleasure of watching this documentary that Katie recently produced, and it really is a testament to her courage, particularly her intellectual courage and her physical courage as well. And we're living in an age where censorship is rife. Between the effective imposition of Islamic blasphemy law, Jeff mentioned the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and this never defeated, I'm sorry folks, the Cold War was not a complete victory, so we say. The Marxists have still been on the march, and between their imposition of censorship, we know it as political correctness, and now this convergence with Islam, it's a very parlous situation, and it takes remarkable courage to do what Katie is doing. And one line struck me, and sorry, you'll have to hear it in Boston's New York accent, not the lovely accented English of Katie Hopkins, but she said, "All this Frenchness feels like a facade. The dark truth is that Islam is gaining ground. Muslims are winning this silent war against French Jews, and fast." And I would add that the Muslims of France are waging and winning a war against the native Christian civilization as well. And I just wanted to share with you, I've been relegated to doing purely research now. I was an internist for many years, but I'm still doing epidemiologic research, and I still try and keep up with surveys that deal with my avocation, which is the study of Islam. And I just wanted to point out three very concordant surveys. The first, because I think it's the most important and the most pressing issue, is Open Doors surveys of this global pandemic of Christian persecution, physical persecution, genocidal levels of persecution. And I just jotted down a few figures from this. It's really, if you look at the 50 worst countries in terms of Christian persecution, the way the list breaks down is there's extreme persecution, then there's very severe and severe. So of the 11 cases that are listed as extreme, 9 of them are Muslim societies. And the other prominent society, of course, is North Korea, which is communist. If you look at the entire list of 50, 4 out of the 50 are communist. There are only 4 other countries that are either non-communist or non-Islamic. So, do the math. It's an overwhelmingly Muslim problem. Those countries, if you look at other survey data that are done just in terms of attitudes, the Anti-Defamation League, much to its chagrin, because it's a pretty increasingly hard left organization, they did some remarkable surveys over a period of about 3 years, so about 2014 through the beginning of 2017. They developed a scale with 11 anti-Semitic stereotypes. So just to be indexed on that scale, you had to agree with at least 6 out of the 11 of these anti-Semitic stereotypes. Then they would calculate, well, what's the prevalence of that degree? And they called it extreme anti-Semitism. It may not be surprising to this audience, but the 16 most, and this is 100 countries that were surveyed, the 16 most virulently anti-Semitic countries in the world are all from the Muslim Middle East. And the prevalence of this degree of extreme anti-Semitism goes from 74 to 93%. When you look more broadly just across religious backgrounds, Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, those that don't profess any faith, compared to Muslims globally, 49% of Muslims have this degree of anti-Semitism, extreme anti-Semitism. When you go, that's 2 to 3-fold greater than any other religious group. It goes down to a low, I think, of about 17% amongst Buddhists and 24% amongst Christians. When you move on to Europe, the situation, because of the influx of Muslims into Europe, has made, even in Europe, the predominant form of anti-Semitism is Muslim anti-Semitism, and this is what some of Katie was experiencing on the ground. 55% of European Muslims have this degree of extreme anti-Semitism. By the way, that's more than the global average. Some of the countries, like Belgium, it's 68%. And wherever you look across Europe, which has its own, non-Muslim anti-Semitic past, it still doesn't matter. It's 2 to 4-fold the extent of anti-Semitism, the prevalence of anti-Semitism amongst the Muslim populations. And the other thing that I wanted to look at was global attitudes towards strict application of the Shariah. And Pew did some surveys between about 2008 and 2012. And obviously it's very high. If you look at the 5 largest Muslim populations that Pew surveyed, 77% of Muslims wanted strict application of the Shariah, and those were countries that included so-called moderate Indonesia in that mix. But what I did is I looked at the Christian persecution, the extreme defined by Open Doors, the extreme anti-Semitism defined by the ADL, and then the desire for strict application of the Shariah. And there's a lot of missing data. You couldn't line up all the countries, but there is still a striking concordance. So where you see the desire for strict application of the Shariah, you are almost invariably going to see extreme anti-Semitism and, worse still, physical persecution, including violent persecution of Christians. And the only reason you don't see perhaps even more loss of life by Jews is because of the existence of Israel. In other words, if there wasn't the IDF, you could imagine that the genocide that vulnerable Christian populations are already experiencing would of course be inflicted upon the Jews. And the fact that someone like Katie is willing, and I would urge all of you to see this documentary. It's only about 45 minutes? 42 minutes, okay. I missed a minute. That's someone.
You got 41.
You really have to see this through the prism of someone who has become increasingly knowledgeable, but takes the more difficult step, which is being willing to fearlessly convey that knowledge. And it's really my great honor to be here tonight and be with Katie. Thank you, Katie.
Well, you all came here tonight to hear the magnificent Katie Hopkins, a.k.a. the British Ann Coulter.
No, much better than that.
Far better. This brave lady is on a mission, spreading truth to those who care to listen. Weighing in on popular topics, including the invasion of Europe, the systematic slaughter of white farmers in South Africa, Europe's Muslim-dominated no-go zones, the plight of Christians in the Middle East, and the growing threat against Christians and Jews in Western Europe. Katie's an award-winning documentary film producer, a columnist for national newspapers, a radio talk show host, and a best-selling author. She spent over a decade in the media, listening, learning, investigating, and exposing the truth. From covering migrant camps in Calais to walking the no-go zones of Sweden. Her reporting on South Africa's government-sanctioned genocide against white farmers was monumental. I was riveted by that. I have to tell you something. She's assumed a lot of risks. She's a brave lady. She's extremely charismatic, damn good-looking, and just a nice person. So anyway, without further delay, come on, Katie.
I generally overhug people. This is just something I do. I try and make people feel physically uncomfortable in my presence, and I succeed very well. Just ask my first husband. So thank you for that lovely introduction, both of you. Very kind indeed. There's something about people giving you, a bit of a long introduction. It starts to get kind of worse and worse the more they go on. Because the more nice things they say, the more you're rather obliged to somehow live up to them. And I fear that the only one way you can go is down. Whereas for a long time there, I think I was known as the biggest bitch in Britain. which is weird because I'm kind of 5'8" and tiny. But anyway, I was known as the biggest bitch in Britain, largely for just speaking my mind, saying the things other people wouldn't say, or saying them in a really uncomfortable way by saying them straight to someone's face when they were sat beside me on the TV. And as Brits, we weren't really used to that, someone just saying it openly without really being overcautious about who you would offend. So that's how I earned that title. But right now, as it stands, I am a straight, white, Christian, conservative mother, married mother of 3 children. And I'm proud of all those things, actually. People always think I'm a lesbian because I have short hair. And so I spend a great deal of time, especially in America, advising people that I just have short hair and that being a lesbian is a different thing. So just to clear that up from the start in case there was any kind of, quiet questioning going on. Not that it would matter either way, because the great thing about conservatives and true Republicans, I think, is that we're perfectly happy for everybody to be exactly what they want to be. We don't really care. I certainly don't care if you want to be a unicorn in your part-time. I don't care if you want to wear petals around your face and think you're a sunflower. It doesn't matter to me one little jot. What I do take offence at, and I will continue to take umbrage at, is you trying to make me feel the same way. You trying to dictate to me that just because today you've decided to chop this off or add that on, I must now brushing over the detail, that I must now decide that you were once Paul, but today you're Pauline. Don't ask me to agree that, because I am never going to believe that that is true. You can chop the legs off a cat. It doesn't make it a slug. I know that. Now, the only thing is, of course, where I come from in my jolly country, you can't say those things anymore. So a good girlfriend of mine, she has 5 children. She's a lovely Catholic lady. In fact, she runs a number of Catholic organisations. She was arrested in front of her 5 children in her home because she inadvertently misgendered. So she called someone who'd changed gender their old gender. She referred to them as a male, whereas now they identify as a female. And she was kept in a prison cell for 7 hours while they worked out what they could charge her with. So that's what happens, and this is what they seem to be seeking to do to us, First, they really are coming for our families. They are messing with this family unit that we have. The strong traditional family unit, we're told, our children are told, is no longer relevant. It's no longer valid. It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter if you have 2 dads, 3 dads, half a dad and 2 mums. It's all just fine. And this is how they start to get into the minds of our children. In the UK, 4 and 5-year-olds, it is demanded by the state, and it is a requirement that they are taught about LGBTQ issues at the age of 4 and 5. Now, 25% of our 4-year-olds start school still in nappies because our mothers are too idle to spend, and fathers are too idle to spend the time teaching their children, potty training their children as they should. These children is going to school in nappies at the age of 4, but then being taught about LGBTQ issues. Now, is that really necessary? They're reading from books where there's 2 penguins raising a chick and they're both dads. They're reading a book where today Peter has decided he wants to become Pauline. They're reading that stuff at the age of 4 and 5, and then we wonder what happened to the family. I can't tell you the number of lovely, lovely Americans I speak to all over the place. And they talk about Thanksgiving, because I'm kind of fascinated by Thanksgiving, because we just don't do it in the UK, and I love it over here. I love everything about it. I love that you dress up all the time. You decorate your houses. Your houses are always immaculate. It's brilliant. But Thanksgiving has really changed here. Thanksgiving has become really odd because so many families I speak to now, and it's often the mums that I talk to, their hearts are broken because often their children aren't coming home for Thanksgiving anymore, or one of the daughters isn't, or the wife of someone's son isn't, because they have different politics. And somehow that's what the left have managed to do to this country. They've made it that you have to now agree as a precursor to debate. And that was never the way before. Agreement should not be the precursor to a discussion. None of us in this room, none of you need to agree with me at all. Perhaps you might agree about some things or no things. That's all fine, and I respect that. But the left have made it that we have to agree to get along. And that's why we see families now unable to spend Thanksgiving with each other. Or, as one lovely American lady told me, she said, well, there's 3 things you can say at Thanksgiving. You can say, awesome, oh my goodness, and how great. And that's the only 3 things you're allowed to repeat over and over while your children tell you stuff, because anything else might be contentious. I was with a family the other night, and we were out after. We'd been in this big Baptist church, and I was showing my latest documentary, Homelands. We were out after with a senator, actually. And it turns out someone in his family has changed, they have the family surname. The daughter-in-law has changed her surname to get rid of the family surname, because she's so ashamed that he's a Republican. And to me, that was the most hurtful of things, because I can imagine, I still have my dad. He's 72. He's the reason I have this nose. I've got a lot to answer for, my father. And I imagine telling my dad that one of his children or grandchildren were going to change their name. You know, how hurtful that would be to a family member. And that's what they've done. So first off, they set at our families and they try and push them apart. And every day, the stronger we try and keep our own families and keep our families together, I think it really matters. The second thing they do is try and take away, so now you don't belong to your family, now your family doesn't matter, now you change your surname, now you don't turn up to Thanksgiving. The second thing they do is try and take away your kind of relationship with your country. Try and make it so your country doesn't matter to you anymore. What's a country anyway? Take away borders, tell anybody they can come in, tell half of Syria, wir schaffen das, we can do this, you're welcome. Take away anything that defines us as a country. What even is a country? The globalists, all wanting us to live in one big mélange of a mixing pot of everything and nothing. In the UK, it's now considered racist to fly our St. George's flag. So the St. George's, the red cross on the white background. So we have the Union flag, but we have the St. George's cross. That is considered a racist symbol. So a gentleman I knew was flying his cross because it was the World Cup and he was supporting England. So we just had some flags out. And they're seen there as this sort of, the New Yorkers, the Californians, the snobbery that's involved. They're seen as very down market now. It's something that the ignorant people fly. And he was told by his landlord that if he didn't remove those St. George's crosses, the English flag, that he would be asked to vacate the property that he had rented from him. Because we no longer fly our flag. And it's one of the glorious things that I love about your country, is that everywhere you go, your flag's there. It doesn't matter if you have to put it in the boot of your car and travel it with you and then get it out when you get to these meeting rooms. You guys really respect your flag. And as you drive through, if you drive into any of your big cities, I don't think you guys are probably even aware of it now, but you have these huge flags flying. Just simply, I know you know because it's your country, not mine. But I watch them in wonderment because we don't get to fly the flag anymore, because we're not allowed to be proud of our country anymore. Our British Army just received posters. People send me stuff all the time, as we all would know, and I'm sure you all send each other stuff all the time. It's important that we stay informed. But our British Army just received posters to put on their walls to warn the recruits to look out for others and signs of extreme right-wing behaviour in others, to start to inform on troops that you serve with. And the signs of extreme right-wing behaviour was having the St. George's cross in your room, of talking with any sense of patriotism about your country, of adding stan to any of the towns or cities, which is something I do all the time with Londonistan. So I got myself in a little bit of a pickle this week when Trump was kind enough to retweet one of my tweets. And there is nothing that the liberal left in my country, my old country, England, hate more than Donald Trump. And if there's one thing they hate more than Donald Trump, it's Donald Trump retweeting anything from me. My mother, we have this thing, 6 o'clock news, okay? So it's news, it's the BBC News, and it comes on at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock news. It's like a religion in my family. At 6, so as I grew up, 5 o'clock on the dot, dinner was on the table. I came from a very, very traditional family. My father sat down, we ate our food, we didn't leave the table until everything had been eaten. God knows how I'm skinny. At 6 o'clock news. So my mother is now, bear in mind, I shield my family from everything. So they are shielded, they are protected, they're down in the countryside, they're not anything to do with my noisy life on the road. My mum is sitting down watching the 6 o'clock news, and up it comes. Katie Hopkins, retweeted by Trump. Imagine she said this. And this relatively okay conservative says, well, I agree with what some of Trump's saying. You know, London is quite dangerous. Understatement. There's just 5 people stabbed in the background as he's doing his piece to camera. You know, people are dying behind him. And then someone else, a Baroness Varsi, she's a real delight. Oh, she's special. She's a lovely Muslim lady. She's a real fan of mine. She comes on to do me down. So I get a text from my mum saying, cow. And that's how I know from time to time that something has resonated all the way back to the bit of countryside where my mum's sitting, because if it hits the 6 o'clock news, then mum's coming out fighting on my side, no matter what I've said or done. But realistically, I was just pointing out a truth, to be fair. This was not even one of my more, offensive tweets. This was, and there's many of them. 5 people had been stabbed or shot in 6 days in London, or Londonistan, as I call it. And you'll bear in mind, of course, we definitely don't have knives because they were banned. And we definitely don't have guns because we're not allowed to carry guns. But, the death rate right now in Londonistan is off the chart. And that is all, in my experience, down to our small Muslim mayor, Sadiq Khan. And of course, Sadiq Khan hates Donald Trump. The very frustrating thing, and the thing I should definitely explain to any American friends of mine, is that England, Great Britain, but let's talk England. England is made up of 2 places. There is a place called London. It is a place that is entirely overrun. I am a minority. Whites are a minority. And in the boroughs of London, the Muslim population can reach upwards of 80%. So that little concentrated ring of voters are up to 80% Muslim, mostly Bangladeshi. Now, in the capital city that is completely overrun, they are the leftists. They are the ones who want to remain in the EU and just drag our country down. They are the ones who speak out against Trump, and Sadiq Khan in particular. But the thing I really need to make clear to you, it's important to me, is that London and Sadiq Khan don't speak for us. They do not speak for the rest of the UK, I promise you. In this lovely other country called the rest of the UK, there are a lot of good people, I promise you, just like you guys. And we love Donald Trump. And we love the 64 million Americans who voted for Donald Trump. And we could not be more grateful to you guys because you give us hope in a time when we have none. I actually made a bit of a plea earlier this year. I made it my pledge that I would kiss every single one of the 64 million Americans that voted Trump. But I think I probably bit off a little bit more than I could chew, if I'm honest. So that's the truth of that, is that the rest of the UK love Trump. You won't hear our voices because the BBC won't allow that view to be heard. But it's important that we know that that is the truth. And London and the BBC don't speak for us. Our BBC, so CNN effectively, that we are obliged to pay for with a compulsory payment that if we don't pay, we get locked up for. Where's Marie? I told Marie this, yeah. I can see you in your dress. I told Marie she couldn't believe it, that we have to effectively pay. We have to $200 a year. We are obliged to pay or they will lock us up for them to provide us with the equivalent of CNN. Now, not only that, but then, of course, when Trump's over and they're offending the office of the President of the United States of America, they did a replica of that hideous, that ridiculous balloon? They did a replica of that balloon and put it in the BBC studio. The BBC studio that we're paying for with our taxes and we have to pay for. I mean, at least North Korea gets its propaganda for free. you know. So that's what we're up against, and that's how that dynamic breaks down between London and the rest of the UK, and it's an important point. But the more important point is they try and make it so we don't care about our countries anymore. But what I think we showed with Brexit, which I know we haven't got, and I'm sorry that we haven't delivered it. And if any of you want to come up afterwards and say, but what happened to the will of the people? I promise you I don't have an answer. We don't have an answer. 3 years on, we still don't have the Brexit that the majority of the British people voted for. Can you even imagine? So all I would say, though, is we did still win. 17.4 million people, which sounds tiny to you guys, but it's like all of our country, voted for Brexit. And that was the best day of my entire life. And I've been married twice. The 23rd of June, 2016, best night of my life by far. Beaten only probably or equaled by the night that Trump won. And they could not bring themselves to call Pennsylvania. I was watching though. Goodness only knows what time it was for me. I'd been awake all night. I was exhausted from running around the kitchen island. Every time another place called for Trump, I did 3 laps of the kitchen island. I was like, by then. And you could see they just so didn't want to call. It was Pennsylvania, the last one, wasn't it? And they were, they just couldn't bring themselves. I could only watch CNN at that point just because of the sheer pain in their faces. Because I don't want to call it. I can't call it. And so that was the other greatest time. And it was the same with Brexit because, watching our BBC and all night long, same with you, the polling, they can't possibly win. It's going to be Clinton by 98%. Wah! And then Brexit won, and then they're going, and it's a vote for and they just couldn't bring themselves to say it. I mean, this is the joy. And it's these moments where I see what we're doing. Because, they have a machine and they're the establishment and they won't give us the Brexit that we voted for, and they'll pretend to America that we all hate Trump and look, here's this stupid balloon in this stupid studio. But the quiet joy is that when we get left to our own devices in the ballot box, when we stand strong together, we win. And we win every time. And we show them that our voices, when we stand together and have our voices heard, we shout louder than them. And they cannot stand it. And that is what is the great joy about what we're all doing here tonight. You had plenty of other things you could have done this evening, and you're here. And because of you, and because of the people that supported Trump, because of the people that supported Brexit, we are joined together. And in that way, there is still hope, and there is still a sense for us that our country matters. Now, what I wanted to do briefly, if I may, and I'm conscious of time because I want to make sure I have enough time to do lots of questions, and you can ask me anything. I wanted to take us briefly into our future and take a glimpse at our future. And there's a future that is my future. Then we can talk about England, which is your future if you don't get your act together. And I say that respectfully, and I don't mean that at these people sitting in this room. And then I think it's a question of where's America going to go and what's it going to decide to do. So if I take you to a glimpse into my future, I take you to South Africa. So I receive emails a lot from people who are in trouble or aren't being heard or can't have their voices heard, or the media won't even share their news stories. And I got a lot of emails from South Africa because farmers, white farmers, were being systematically genocided and cleansed from the land. So because the ANC has a policy which is called land expropriation without compensation, which basically means we're going to take your land and we're not going to pay you for it. And everybody thought Cyril Ramaphosa was going to be, it'd be wrong to say the great white hope, I suppose. But because everybody thought he was going to be the great hope, when he stood up and said, it is our policy, land expropriation without compensation, Obama goes over there and carries on with, the Rainbow Nation rubbish. What it means if the ANC say that is that on the ground, the EFF, the guys with the red hats, the red T-shirts, you'll have seen them protesting outside H&M, whatever. They translate that as, we'll kill the whites. They sing, kill the Boer, kill the Boer. They chant it when they meet. And what it means on the ground is that these farmers on their properties are just being plucked off one by one. So I went over to South Africa with a camera and a security team. And I travelled the equivalent of east to west coast of America in some sort of trucks that we had to find and speak to these farmers, either victims of attacks or survivors of attacks, or farmers worried because they believe they'll be next. And I slept with them on their farms because I wanted to feel what it's like. You know, I have a young son, he's called Max. And little Max is 10 now. And sometimes still, little Max thinks there's monsters. You know, so he'll come in and say, oh, there's a monster behind my wardrobe, or there's a monster under my bed. And I go in, or Mark will go in, and we'll say, oh, look, there's no monster here, like we all do. We all know how this thing goes. But, you know, in South Africa, it struck me that at night is when the monsters come. And the monsters are real. I met one gentleman called Bernard, and Bernard took me through his house and reenacted the day that the gang came. He was coming back from church with his father, who had farmed the land before him and still helped on the farm. And they came back to light a braai, which is like their big barbecue idea, to feed the family. And as they pulled in, they got out of their car, and there was a gang, a black gang, waiting for them in their garage. They saw the door a little bit open. They came out, they got Bernard's father, and they beat him up savagely. And then Bernard, they got him and tied him up with wire. They used the fencing wire to tie people up. And as Bernard's lying there on his garage floor, he doesn't know where his father is, but he can see his father's blood on the floor. He heard the thing that no man ever wants to hear. He heard his wife's car coming up the drive with their children. He had no way of telling her, no way of stopping her. She pulled in, and their little boys, who were, I think, 7 and 9 at the time, they did that thing that kids do, where they get out their car and they run to see who's the first one to make it to the front door. You know the game. That's what the boys did. And then the black gang shot at his eldest son. And that bullet hole is still in the door, just above where his son was. They missed him. They dragged him across the yard. And then they took the rest of the kids and made them sit in the garage doorway. They tied up the mother with wire and they beat her. Bernard's father died from his bleeding on the stoop, and Bernard watched him die. His mum, that Bernard's wife, survived, and Bernard too. But the boys saw the whole thing. And when I spoke to Bernard, he said that, you know, they didn't just take my father. They took my children too. Bernard's son is on antidepressants and sleeping tablets because he can't sleep anymore. And they still weren't working. So Bernard went back to the doctor and said, oh, these aren't working. I think we've got the wrong ones. The doctor said to him, you go home, you take them tonight. Bernard was out for the count. But the son still can't sleep. And the other son, the elder son, tried to kill himself because he said he wanted to be with his grandfather, and that shot should have been for him. And they won't go out on the land anymore because they're afraid. And they can't leave the house anymore because they're afraid. And that story from Bernard goes on and on. I met Mariandra. She's a face many of you might start to get to know. She's speaking out a lot. She's very brave. The gang came to her home and shot her husband point blank in front of her daughters. One of her daughters offered her piggy bank to the gang if they would leave her mummy live. She buried her husband and then gave birth to their first son 5 days later. And this is the story every day in South Africa. Every day another family dies. And you know, one of the powerful things about it, and these big Boers, these huge men, 7 foot, 8 foot, I don't know, they seem like they go on forever. I love them all. Is that they've accepted this plight. They are now 8% whites in South Africa. They can't get a job because you're not allowed a job if you're white. Many whites now live in slums. I went to visit some because they can't get an income because you're not allowed a job if you're white. And they've accepted that they will never, ever leave their land. And they say, people say, I wanted to ask them, why don't you go? Why would you stay? Why would you wait? But the truth is they're so poor, apart from their land, they have nowhere they can go. And because no one will accept that this is happening, they have nowhere to go. Australia was going to offer them refuge, but then the Australian politician that suggested it, was called a racist and a white nationalist, and so he rescinded his offer. So they have nowhere to go, but the reason I say this is a glimpse into our future is because this is what happens when you're reduced to an 8% minority. And we're well on our way in the UK. They talk now of making a last stand. They say they will not leave their land because it's the land of their fathers. They say they will die in their boots for the love of their land. And there is something biblical, biblical about South Africa. There's something epic, not just the scale of the place, but just this determination that we will never leave our land. And there is something kind of glorious about that. And at the weekends, South African farmers join together with their wives, their children. They practice, they rehearse, they perform drills, they train to make a last stand. The plan is that they will pull back to a defendable space and they will make a last stand. There was an old battle called Blood River, the Battle of Blood River. They talk of that now, the next Battle of Blood River. And that to me is the glimpse into the future when we are finally hunted down, when we become the minority. I think in England, we aren't far behind. I am a minority now in London, where whites are a minority. I am a minority in Bradford, in Birmingham, in Luton, in Leicester. That list goes on and on. If you stop a child in Birmingham, Birmingham's like a city in the middle of the country, that child is more likely to be a Muslim than any other religion. 25% of people in Birmingham don't speak any English whatsoever. I went to Savile Town. It's a town featured in the documentary we were talking about. Savile Town is a little town in Yorkshire. Yorkshire tea, rolling, hills. They do the cycling through Yorkshire. You've got an image of mills and cotton mills. Savile Town is now 97% Muslim. 97%. When I went there with my cameraman, we raised the percentage of whites by 2%. And in a town where 97% of people are Muslim, you can see how this works. People will say to you, leftists will say, oh, but in the UK there's only 5% Muslim. It's only 7% Muslim. Even if they were correct, probably 10% Muslim? Yes. But they have a very clever, systematic plan for the takeover of our countries. And that is the densely populated areas where they then gain complete control of the town, of the mayorships, of the financing, of the housing, of the police. And that's true in Savile Town too. And the model goes very much like this. Move in a densely packed population where there used to be one American family, one British family, now there's 5 Muslim families. Now you're going to build the mosques to facilitate this densely packed population. Minnesota, Minneapolis. Keep building those mosques. Do you think those mosques are mosques? Please. Their banking, their equipment, their resupply, their thinking, their strategic tactics. That's what mosques are. The biggest threat to America today is Islam. And Islam is patient. And Islam's takeover will be quiet. The silent invasion of your country where no army ever appeared to come. Once you have a densely packed population now funded by mosques, which you'll see proliferate like crazy, then you do the next step, and you've just watched that happen here with Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. What flag did Rashida fly when she won? Palestinian. Tell me this. If you come to America, you love this country. This country gives you opportunity and hope and freedom. Why are you flying someone else's flag when it grants you the privilege of one of the highest offices in the land? Political Islam comes next. The mosque decide who you're going to vote for, the imams dictating who votes for what, and now you will never ever see power return back to a non-Muslim. Keith Ellison hands to Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar hands to whomever. And look at the transition in Ilhan Omar. How did she start off? Oh, so interesting. A bit of orange, kind of tropical. Oh, she's fabulous. What does she do now? Black, black, black. Serious, pro-Palestine, free Palestine, talk down about America. That switch happened almost overnight. And you see that time and time and again. What's coming for you next? The Islam Party. In Belgium, which was referred to earlier, Belgium's a really special place, really. Not even people from Belgium want to be from Belgium. So Belgium has a party called the Islam Party. It's made up only of Muslims, led by Muslims, and their policies are head covering, segregated transport, halal meats, and the rest of it. Germany too. Germany doesn't have an Islam party, but it had a migrant party. So only made up from people that are migrants, led by a Muslim, and then returned a huge result because of the tribalism involved in the politics behind that. So that's where England's at. We now have all of these towns and major cities that are completely taken over by a densely packed Muslim population who control housing. We have a Muslim housing association in London, so we cannot access that housing. There's a Muslim police association in London. It's not one like you have. You have the pretend Muslim police, don't you? Have the pretend NYPD cars. Ours is real, the Muslim Police Association. And before you know it, you have this dual policing system that starts off, and that's not a good thing to witness. So I'll give you one example. In a place called Glasgow, it is a rough end of Glasgow. There's a densely packed Muslim population. It's the middle of the day, 4 o'clock. And out onto the street comes a woman. She's all aflame. She's all lit up. And she's screaming, "Help me, help me." And a guy hears her and he runs out. He's in a garage where he's working. He manages to find water. She's on the grass now, laid down. And he manages to throw water on her and puts her out. And I have pictures still of the grass where they picked her up and put her in the ambulance, all black and burnt. That part of Glasgow is under Shariah. It's under Muslim policing. They did a statement. The police said there were no suspicious circumstances. And the local mosque, despite the fact there was no other comment to be made by the police, the mosque said, "It was one of our sisters. It was not a hate crime, so people don't need to be concerned. But a good Muslim doesn't gossip about what happens to a sister." Now, when you start with that kind of policing happening, then all of your faith in your country is very easily diluted. The reason 2,000 of our young white girls were raped in one town alone, Rotherham, was because when the girls went to the police didn't want to be called Islamophobic. When the girls told the social workers, they didn't want to be called racist. The girls were pushed away, turned away. "No, you must be wrong." Some of them were from care homes, so they just weren't believed. And in the end, 2,000 girls were raped by gangs of majority Pakistani Muslim men. I was referred to the police. I was investigated for calling these rape squads majority Pakistani Muslim rape squads, and it wasn't looking too good for me until statistics came out on it, and it was revealed that they were actually majority Pakistani Muslim rape squads. So I'll take that one. But this is where the police come in. The police are now a legitimate arm of the government silencing machine. There is a hate crime unit that Sadiq Khan has set up to police Twitter, specifically my Twitter. And I have been arrested and interviewed under caution by the Major Crime and Homicide Command, 2 men in a cell with a tape recorder for a column I wrote in the newspaper about migrants, because it was seen as hate speech. Luckily, that wasn't referred and I got away with that. But they are cracking down fast. My children are referred to social services. So people that are against me or want to shut me up will ring social services about my children. So we've had them to the house 3-4 times. And I respect that. I'm glad. Because if someone's in trouble, I want them to be found out. The only thing I wonder is, where were social services for those 2,000 girls in Rotherham when they needed some help? Why is it that it would be believable if it was something to do with me? So they will come to you which way they can. There was a couple of jihadis. They wanted my head as a wedding present. I suppose. If you can't get a toaster, why not get a head? The lady said, well, she's the biggest kafir of them all, so I'll have her head. She was called I mean, I don't know. And he was called and they made a plan to chop my head off, and they got a dummy, like a shop dummy, and they got a hunting knife, and they practiced. Don't know why you need to practice, to be honest. I think I could give it a good shot on my own. So they practiced, and then in the middle of the night, one night in my home, which bear in mind is in the countryside because I keep my children out of the way, near my mum and dad too, a group of men arrived, all dressed in black. They fixed my phones up to the police station so that all I had to do was pick up a phone and drop it, and the police would come. They brought a black box, maybe it's this big, and they put it up on the 3rd floor. I had 3 floors on my house. And they said that if jihadis should come in the front door or the back door, I should run up to the top floor and shake the box. It's a panic box, and the police would come. My children sleep on the 2nd floor of my house. Wouldn't be going up to the 3rd floor any day. Not any day. And they left, and they told me not to worry. But my point is that when jihadis come for your head, you realise you've reached a point where they are determined to silence you, because if you speak the truth too loudly, and they can't shut you up by threatening you or your children or your house or taking your home or taking your jobs, and you still speak, in a way, whether you keep your head or not, your victory over them is still true. Because you're still here, you're still speaking. They can't intimidate you, they can't silence you. And I think that's a very important and powerful thing. The 2 jihadis went to prison, so that was a great result for once. And then, because the state wasn't quite finished with me yet, the government sponsored a play called The Assassination of Hopkins. And billboards went up around the UK for this play, which ran for 2 weeks. And trying to explain to my mum why there would be posters up in the UK called The Assassination of Hopkins. You know, it's a tough thing to explain to your mum. Oh, it's because I've got the wrong opinion, mum. You know, those things don't reconcile so well, you know. So we are headed into dark times in the UK, and it's why I spend a lot of time on the road, having seen what it's like in South Africa, having seen what's coming for us. It's so important to me that America does not let itself fall as we have fallen. That is my message to America. Do not let yourselves fall as we have fallen. And because these steps are so clear, you can see where you are against them. What's coming next for me in my country is a formal definition of Islamophobia. Islamophobia is a made-up word. But the definition they're trying to get accepted, and they will achieve this, because you know how this works. When they go for it, they achieve it. Every single court case, every single legal case, anything they're testing, whether it's head coverings in Congress or whatever else, it's a test case for progress. They will get a definition of Islamophobia. And they are saying that definition will be any form of racist or hateful behaviour towards Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. So if I am in any way not in agreement with someone who has perceived Muslimness, then that will become a prosecutable offence. Now, please help me, because I don't even know what perceived Muslimness looks like. I see what burqas look like, and we got plenty of them. But if that's the low bar for hate speech in the UK, then my next destination is surely behind bars. But that's where they go next. That's what they'll seek for this country, and it's their way of getting de facto blasphemy laws in place. We had a Tommy Robinson rally in Hyde Park, you know, that bastion of free speech, where anyone can say what they like. Well, he wasn't allowed to speak to start with, but some people were coming over to join him, some journalists, a nice girl I know. She's a young girl, she's quite overexcitable, but she's not a bad egg. Nothing wrong with her, no criminal record, nothing. She was coming over to join that free speech event at Hyde Park Corner, at Speaker's Corner. She got hauled off the bus at Calais. Bear in mind, about 2,000 migrants are allowed to come through Calais on a daily basis in the back of a truck, and no one bats an eyelid. She was pulled off the bus she was on in Calais. She was held in a cell, and then she was deported from Calais. She never even got to the UK. And you know the reason they gave? On the basis of future hate speech as yet unsaid, that might upset local communities. So you can be banned from the UK on the basis of future hate speech, as yet unsaid, that might upset local communities. And you know what local communities are, don't you? This is code speak. We see code speak all the time. Asian men, majority Pakistani Muslim. Honour killings, killing a woman because you want her out the way. Grooming gangs, rape squads. Language is a really nasty tool used against our Judeo-Christian civilization. So if you're being banned on the basis of future hate speech as yet unsaid, I defy anybody to say that we have freedom of speech in the UK. So I will come to a close, I promise. But I would say that the key things for me about America are your Constitution, and they really are your First and Second Amendment. So they can do what the hell they want to Minnesota and Minneapolis and the Mall of America, and they can turn it into the biggest sinkhole there is. And I tell you what, in a way, if they're all congregated in one place, then it makes the target far easier to find. But what I would say is that for as long as any of you have breath in your body, your First and Second Amendment are the key to your survival. In America, in South Africa, way back in the day, when apartheid fell, they had to hand in their weapons. They've tried the same again recently. And where do you think those weapons turned up? And in whose hands do you think those weapons turned up in? The black gangs now slaughtering the whites off the land. The day they tell you, as they have done recently in New Zealand, to hand in your weapons is the day you firmly, and I know you will, say no. You saw what happened in New Zealand after the Christchurch murders. And we all acknowledge, I'm sure, that that's a horrific, a terrible, a hideous event, and no one, all of us condone any violence of that kind. But the reaction to the Christchurch mosque shooting, really terrifying in its nature. Jacinda Ardern, covered from head to toe, prostrate in her desperation to appease the Muslims. The call to prayer boomed across New Zealand endlessly. A royal family member sent over to express condolences. We had the call to prayer boomed out from Trafalgar Square under Nelson's column. They had to hand in their weapons. They banned semi-automatic weapons straight away, you saw. And the latest development in New Zealand, when they really come for your country, they just took the Lord's Prayer out. They took reference to Jesus out. I think that's more accurate. References to Jesus out from the parliamentary prayer. One guy unilaterally decided that it would be more accommodating to remove Jesus from the prayer. That was the response to one attack in New Zealand. Whereas what's the response we see to the slaughter of Christians? An absolute silence. So that's how I feel about your First and Second Amendment. I believe in it so deeply that I'm a member of the NRA, even though I will never ever get to have any weapon whatsoever in the UK. Most women go to school with all baby on board in the back of their car. I have NRA. I hope that keeps them away. It does tend to. Plus the sight of my face. So your First and Second Amendment, absolutely key. And the other thing, because it's not all doom and gloom, is that we're all here in this room together. And I tell you, having gone now I've been on the road for a while, but from Israel, with Netanyahu, brilliant Israelis who are so thrilled to have Trump and America backing them. It's so uplifting to be there and feel the strength of support for Trump. To go to other meetings across America where there's people just like you, who know what's right and what's wrong, who know what they want for their children and their daughters and their sons and are willing to fight for it, who aren't just going to sit back and let their country be taken away. The 17.4 million good Brits who live in the rest of the UK, who went out when they were told Brexit would kill us all and voted for Brexit anyway. The 64 million Americans who voted for Trump and all those good people at that rally in Florida. I mean, what a joy it was just to watch those people queue for 2 days. I spoke to someone in the queue. She was beside herself because all the men were incredibly good looking. Fact. And there's also hope because of what you've done. Because of you people, others are rising up. You are pulling like strings through us, through Europe. In Western Europe, there is hope. There is Salvini in Italy. He told the migrants, you come here, you touch one of our girls, we're going to send you back on a peddler if we have to. Brilliant guy. The Alternative for Deutschland. Good guys. Now doing very well in the polls, behind the Greens, because no one can vote for Merkel because she's an utter lunatic. The Swedish Democrats, also populists. Throughout Western Europe, populists are rising up. Farage, for all his dodgy teeth and bad breath, he is standing up for populists, and we're not going away. So we are following you. You are our big hope. I don't want to put that on you, but I'm right there by your side. You know, I was supposed to join the military. I was sponsored through university by the Intelligence Corps. I had a 35-year regular commission with the Intelligence Corps, and I went through Sandhurst. But I'm also epileptic. And so I worked out a little bit later, as did the army, that an epileptic with a semi-automatic weapon is not such a smart idea. And that was quite a wise decision on their part. But my point rather being is that I feel like now I fight for my country in a different way. And you know, every day I feel like I'm surrounded by an army of patriots just the same. And I think that together we tell our truths. Together we stand united, and we promise to get furious and to fight back. Thank you very much indeed for your time. We're looking because when we go, we want to leave our children somewhere safe. I won't be leaving mine in England. So my family is looking to Poland, to Hungary, to places that have stood up for our Christian culture, that have refused to let the migrant invasion happen. You know, the safest place in Western Europe to be female is Poland. The safest place. They've had no terrorist attacks whatsoever. And for my Jewish friends, and observing the Jewish movement of people, Jewish people are leaving Paris in their thousands. So 8,000 Jews left in 2016, and that trajectory is set to continue. So I spent some time with Jewish families in Paris who are being persecuted by the Islamists. The Islamists are in complete control in Paris, be under no illusion. Anybody that buys into the Notre Dame was felled by construction. I think we can all, you know, remember that time Notre Dame burnt down and no one needed to find out why.
Yeah.
Funny how quickly that all just went away because the media decided it to be so.
But there's plenty of money to rebuild.
Oh, of course. One tower went burnt down in the UK, Grenfell Tower. We've never heard the end of it. Notre Dame, it's as if it never happened. And no one questions it one jot. 18 French families, I went and met one of them, living in the heart of Paris, in the Jewish quarter. It's beautiful. 18 families received a letter telling them, we know who you are, we know where you are, we're going to kill you. The police came and told them, there's nothing we can do, you have to get out. I went to the home of little Myriel Noll, little grandma, she's 82 years old. She was stabbed 7 times by her Muslim neighbour and thrown off of her balcony. In the Hypermarché, it's a kosher supermarket, a guy went in with a gun, held people hostage, gunned people down in retaliation for Charlie Hebdo. If anybody is under attack in Paris, it's always the Jewish community, and that's why they're leaving. So I followed some of them to Israel. A lovely couple. They were there in Israel and they were so thrilled to finally have a place to call home and to feel safe. But they still wanted, they've got 2 daughters still in Paris. They're desperate for them to come. A gentleman journalist I spoke to said, French Jews should treat every day like September the 1st, 1939. And this lovely lady who'd escaped with her husband to Israel, she was spat at in the street in Paris. She was called a dirty Jew. She was tired of having to hide away all of their kippah and all the rest of it. They're not allowed to gather outside the synagogue, armed guards at the school gate. She said, you know, we always have to remember that the pessimists are now in LA with a pool, and the optimists went to Auschwitz. And we can no longer afford to be optimistic in Western Europe anymore. And those words, I tell you, still makes me go now. So that's what we're under. The second Holocaust is upon us. And what's crazy about that is that because the Muslim Council, because the Muslim lobby groups, because Labour don't want to talk about it because they want the Muslim vote. Curiously, liberal Jewish organisations have allied with the Muslim organisations, and the Jewish organisations won't speak about it either. There's one particular Jewish organisation, called the Board of Deputies in the UK. When I was in Israel to show my Homelands film, we had a beautiful theatre in a municipal building. 85 people were coming, all tickets gone. The Board of Deputies, a Jewish organisation in the UK, had that venue shut down. This is the level of shutting down of conversation and truth that we face. But we will prevail. But yes, that's why Jewish families are leaving Paris, and I would say that within 10 years we won't see Jewish diasporas certainly not in London, certainly not in Paris, and certainly not in Germany. And the real fear, actually, of Farage's success is that it has the ability, if you imagine, this could go wrong, there's water involved. This is the Conservative Party. This is the Brexit Party. If you split the Republican vote, the Conservative vote, you get Jeremy Corbyn in at number 10. And that will be the end of Jews in Western Europe, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. Want a drink or something before we
Oh, no,
Okay.
not at all.
Anyway, Q&A session. We want to keep this orderly. Gentleman over there, Oath Keeper shirt, New York. Please stand up so everybody can hear you.
Just a hypothetical, I don't know what the odds are on Brexit going through, but how would a Brexit change the dynamic?
Yes, so Brexit. So there's 3 years since we voted for Brexit. We never got it, haven't got it. And we're now down to, it's like The Apprentice. I mean, really, we're now down to 4 prime ministerial candidates in the running. 5 became 4. Trump's search for a new apprentice goes on. No, so we now have 4 candidates in the running to be prime minister, and one of them, Boris Johnson, Bojo, blonde hair like Trump. It's going to be brilliant. He will give us Brexit. If we get Boris Johnson, we might get Brexit. He's promised, I mean, I know politicians never do what they say unless they're called Trump. He's promised to take us out by the 31st of October this year. Okay. So that's what happens if we get Bojo. He is the lead, he is the favourite, and because of pressure from Farage marshalling the Brexit vote, I'm still hopeful that will happen. And what it will deliver, most importantly, I mean, there's a way of sort of saying this, which is if we don't get Brexit, you know, the heart of the country has been destroyed. And I know there's some real frustration amongst all of us about why do the British people never rise up. But you take away, when people vote, they want to believe in it. Same with Americans. We want to believe in democracy to the point where we'll almost forgive obvious idiots in polling stations who are clearly trashing our vote because we want to believe democracy matters. So if we get Brexit, there'll be a sort of re-establishing in the faith. And because Boris is strong, he's a good friend with Trump, it'll be a good ally for us. It could be the best of times. And I think there'd be a sort of rejuvenation because finally good will win out over evil. There is a sort of biblical battle on this. If we don't get it, though, you know, then the Liberal left won. The government was able to overturn the will of the people, and I truly believe it's just I just see the end is, you know, like the bit where you go really fast at the end when you roll down a hill, it'll just speed up even faster. I think then we're out. I'm out.
Mr. Rapini.
Oh, Kate.
Yes.
Dominic Rapini. So we understand, I think most Americans, especially the 64 million that voted for Trump, understand the importance of stopping our open border situation. We know that the Democrats here
Yes.
want open borders because they want to overload our system.
Yes.
But you know, England's an island. What happened? Where did this influx of people from all over the world come from that are taking over this? How did they get in? And what changed to allow that to happen?
Yes. So one thing, your borders, having stood in McAllen outside the Catholic Charities, yeah, that's an organisation, isn't it? And watched your border force I videoed them, bringing 4 Border Force vehicle loads of migrants direct to the Catholic Charities organisation. Watched them deposit their load on the lawn of the Catholic Charities organisation. And the woman who was running the place screaming at me, because if you film these people, the traffickers will know they are here and they will come and extort more money from their families. So the owner of one of the people that help run that shelter, acknowledging that they know these are trafficked people being moved by the border force, and they're taking them at whatever it is they get per head. 2,000, I think the profit margin is on a regular trafficked person. So that's happening at your border. For us, it all happened after the boats. Remember the boats coming across the Med? There was one particular incident where a little boy was washed up. It became that kind of picture that everyone saw Alan Kurdi, those little red feet. And it was those shoes that really got us, because mums, we have a thing for children's feet. And that's why that image just resonates. But because of Alan Kurdi washing up on that beach, drowned, that's when Merkel stood up and said, "Wir schaffen das, we can do this. We open up the borders," and that's when they all came. And there was never a point where any political leader had the stomach, the guts, or the testicular fortitude. That was probably the wrong gesture to go with that. To say, to say, actually, this is a really bad idea, because they all wanted to be the good guy. All that was allowed in the political narrative was tears and tea cakes, and no one would stand up and say what Trump will say, which is we need to put our people first. You try getting an appointment at socialised healthcare. My mum can't get a hip repair. Yes.
Okay, then it was the freedom of movement allowed by the EU that allowed people to move anywhere they want.
Once you get inside the EU, you can go where you want. We won't even question it. Yeah.
People can move anywhere.
Yeah, and if you and because of our poor relationship with the French, if they've got a truckload of migrants, I've spent time in those trucks. I've spent time in the parks. They're controlled by the movers of the people. You put your truck in that park. The park is already given over to the people traffickers. They fill up the trucks overnight and off they go. And because the Polish drivers are paid so little, it's their way of making extra money. So goodness only knows how many people are really in our country as well that shouldn't be there. But it's why we had that tower that burnt down. It was called Grenfell Tower. It was a block of flats. We were never allowed to know. People who lived there went there straight when it was burning. 350, they reckon, were killed. The official figure, 72. Because they could have never acknowledged the number of people that were there because they didn't exist. Invisible people. But the people who lived there knew. Crazy situation.
Mark, please stand up.
Hi, my name is Mark. I'm that French Jew, the son of
Oh.
What is it about Hungary? What is it about their DNA that allows them to stop this?
I know. Yeah, they've just got something about them, and I think it's because they've had periods in their history where they didn't necessarily have control of their country. Now they do have that control. They aren't going to give it up as easily as we're appearing to. They have stated very clearly that we are a Christian country. We don't do that in the UK. When the migrants were coming, they went and reinforced their borders because they determined they would not do what Merkel said. They sent the army in to patrol the reinforced borders because they would not do what Merkel said. When Merkel said, you will take this migrant quota or we'll throw you out the EU, they said, try us. They won't allow a mosque to be built because they say it's a Christian culture, and they have zero illegal immigration. If you're coming into Hungary or Poland, you have to come in through the correct channels. And for that reason, it's the safest place. And I'm so admiring of them.
Jamie, stand up, please.
I mean, I'm terrified of living there because, no, stay there, sweetie. You look marvellous. You look jolly. Stand up, yeah. They say Hungary and Poland smells a lot of eggs. Smells quite sulfuric. So I'm not sure I do want to live there, but in a way I do. So I'm torn. I don't want to live in an eggy country, but I might have to. Yes, ma'am.
Can you stand up? We can't hear you, ma'am.
George Soros did a review about the country back then. It was so he got so hated by that. That's why he's pushing so much.
The Soros thing is bizarre, isn't it? It's so bizarre. Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
About him of why he does what he does to support bringing these people here and paying for it. But my other question is, in England, is the royal family like all converted to Islam?
Oh, so depressing. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I should listen properly. So my father would say, listen, for God's sake. Stop goofing about and listen. My father says, if you have nothing nice to say nothing at all. I say, if you've got nothing nice to say, come sit next to me. It's how Marie and I pass our time, essentially, just gossiping about people. But anywho, royal family. So we have one generation of royals left. We have the Queen. And God love her. And she looks better every day. Her outfits are better every day. She looks younger than me every day. You're fine. Yeah. And so everyone can join in how the hell they want. You shut up for long enough. Stop bossing people about, for goodness sake. So we love the Queen. We love her. We love her. And the day she goes, I don't even know what's going to happen to our country. I think we're just going to fall on the floor, all of us. I used to do radio, and it used to be, live radio. And it used to be the thing you did at the start of every show was like, please don't let the Queen die today, because you can't cope with it on live radio. But no, so we have one generation of royal. Then we have William and Catherine, also fabulous, also royals. And yes, of course, they'll carry on what the Queen has left them. She has provided the forward momentum for them to continue. But after that, we're through. And I don't know what's gone on. I don't know how it's happened. If I went full tin hat conspiracy theorist, do I think Meghan Markle was put inside our royal family? Yes, I do. I cannot stand that nasty little woman. I don't trust her. She's twice divorced. I mean, I'm divorced. Hey, I'm not trying to marry Prince Harry, though, am I? I don't like her. She's Obama's best mate. She's trying to change everything. Harry used to go hunting. Yeah? He used to go out with his friends hunting. Fine. Can he go hunting anymore since vegan pants arrived on the scene? No, he cannot. Have you seen his face recently? That boy used to have a naughty spark. It's what we loved. It was brilliant. He was military. He used to take his clothes off when he shouldn't. It was fantastic. Now, what does he look like? Someone at a funeral sucking on a lemon. So she's spoiled our life completely, and I cannot stand her. And people can see through her. We see. I give it a year. Yeah.
Okay.
But we were having fun gossiping.
Jamie, I just want to add something. Soros, Nazi collaborator, demented. He's a sick man. Anyway, this gentleman in the front row over here fell victim to my bifocals. But his name's Bob, and he's got a question for you, so please.
You must work with Rahim Kassam. He's a card similar to you, and I'm just wondering if you could give us some insight into.
Yeah, so hold on, I can't say it properly. Rahim Kassam is what I say, but it's Raham Kassam. I don't know how you say it.
Rahim Kassam.
Rahim Kassam, yeah. So I knew him back in the UK because he's in the US now, huh?
Is he really?
Yes, and he's working on he's got a platform, Human Events, I think. Yeah. So I haven't seen him for a wee while. One thing I do feel, and there is often a lot of falling out between people who are on the same side. And I do try, honestly, to keep going back to the fact that we are all on the same bench. And even if we have our disagreements, or we don't trust her, or we don't trust him, or we're not sure about him, or did you hear what he did? I think we have to try and park those internal wranglings and always put our best face forward to the opposition. And so it is my constant plea to our team that we recognise we're on the same bench. Because as you will see, especially with the boys, because, they've got issues. No, not you. Boys tend to compete over stuff we don't need to compete. You get like a Tommy Robinson competing with a Rahim, competing with a Ben, competing. It's craziness. We're on the same bench. Yeah.
Good point.
There was a lady over there in the stripes. You had a question before, right?
Yeah.
Don't worry if you haven't got one. Don't feel obliged.
No, I did. It had to do with when we were talking about the Queen and how everything just started, the migration and all that. Why? Didn't they have something didn't she have something to say about it?
No, that's what's the joy of her. That's the joy of the Queen, is that she never says anything about anything. And it's just, what a skill. What a skill. Really, can you imagine being the Queen and all this crap happening? And she must just want to throw her hat on the floor, stamp it through and say, God damn. And she says not one word, but just puts more fuchsia on and looks great. If it was me, and that's why I think the Markle, sparkly pants as I call her, trailer trash, that's now in our royal family. The thing about our trailer trash is that, she is all for the talking. Instagram, here's a picture of this, standing up at the celebrity award with this, this is not the way. We like our royals to be aloof. We like them to be a bit royal. We don't necessarily want them to be like us. Look, we're like us. There's enough of us. We want someone a bit royal. So she will never get involved. She hasn't got involved even in Brexit, and I'm sure she must be spitting about that. So it's an awesome skill she has, and we'll never have another queen. It's very sad.
The gentleman over here in the red shirt.
Thank you. I'm Brian.
Hey, Brian.
Hi, Brian Hermansdorfer.
Oh my God, hold on. Brian Hermansdorfer. Yes, that's brilliant.
I'm a proud member of Act for America, and I thank Jane for organizing this.
Yes.
Katie, thank God for a sense of humor, right? I mean, thank God for our courage and our sense of humor. We absolutely need both. My question to you would be with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and President Trump, hopefully designating the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, wouldn't it be just, my life would be, I'm going to just do 18 laps of my kitchen island naked. When the Muslim Brotherhood are called a terrorist organization, it's going to be such a great day, because it won't end there either. That would be the start, and that would be the start of the fight back. And I think one of the things that's so soul destroying, and I think we all feel it when we watch Fox News and watch those presenters who are clearly biting their tongues in order to keep their jobs, because they can't mention Islam anymore, because they need to have their jobs and we don't want to lose them. But I think one of the great things about Trump is that he's prepared to do the ballsy things that need doing. What's the great disappointment is there is not a strong line. We would hold the line in military terms, hold the line. Where is that line of strong conservative Republicans standing right behind Trump saying, we are with you, because that's what he hasn't got. And that's what we need to give him. He needs those people right behind him saying, we're with him. And none of them seem to, well, some do. Louis, some were at the rally, Louis Gohmert. Yeah, and I'm specifically talking about Congress people, senators, where are they? Regular Americans, of course. I'm talking about the power players that sort of try and be the nice guy to everyone. We need people who are prepared not to be liked. It is okay to be disliked. I'm hated by loads of people. It's very fine. They don't speak to you. It's actually a great thing. Well, I'm going to bust their asses if I ever see them. I tell you that for nothing. Wanting to be liked is one of the worst failings that we're putting into our children. Wanting to be popular, it's very, very overrated. I tell my children all the time, aspire to be hated. No, I don't say that. No, but trying to be popular all the time is what our politicians do. And what we used to have is conviction politicians. That's what Trump is, that's what Thatcher was, and that's what we should be trying to hire when we vote for people now.
There's a gentleman with a question to the right, but before I take it, Andrew Bostom is also available. Dr. Bostom, if you have any questions for him. Sir, you want to stand up?
Okay, more of a statement.
Oh, I love your tie.
First of all, thank you.
What is that?
Yes.
Wow.
But anyway, first
Sorry.
things first is there's a difference between being good and being nice. And I'm reading a book about that called No More Christian Nice Guy. And secondly, I don't like it when people refer to George Soros as sick. My father died of cancer. I worked in a cancer home.
Okay.
Those people are sick. George Soros is evil.
Yeah, very good.
I'll go along with that.
I'm sorry for your dad. I'm sure you miss him. When did your dad pass?
2002.
I'm sorry for that. I'm really scared for when my parents die. I'm not that brave. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do, so I'm very sorry for that, and I think your point is absolutely accurate. I used to be taught by nuns, which was a truly terrifying thing. They used to... Did you used to be taught by nuns?
Me too. I lived with my mother's aunt, who was a nun in a terminal cancer home.
Oh, my God. I took any more of the cancer stories. I'm trying to lift the mood.
I live with nuns, so.
Okay, so I went to a girls' school run by nuns. Now, whoever came up with the idea that nuns could teach? Oh, yeah, you've got a habit on. Great, you could do French. I mean, I don't know where that came from. So they used to tie up my left hand. I'm only 44. I know I look 62. But they used to tie up my left hand behind my back to try and make me right-handed because God's children were right-handed. Whoop, whoop. Right? That's why I turned out this way. Sister Bede, she was a piece of work. I can tell you that for nothing. Sister Bede used to say, nobody wants, because if you wrote nice in your essay, you had to stay in at class because nobody wants to be nice. Katie, nobody should be using the word nice. Nobody. So I took her at her word and became the biggest bitch in Britain.
Please, yes. Stan?
Okay, I have a question, but I first wanted to say, I think the problem with the immigrants in the UK goes much further back. I mean, I lived in Yorkshire in the early 90s, and Bradford was taken over at that point. And I just think that also a big part is that, especially with the France and the UK, is the colonial past. When you have taken over countries, some of them are Muslim, then you kind of have an open door to letting the former colonial,
I hear what you're saying, yeah.
So I just think that maybe that you speak about it.
Yeah, no, you're so right to touch on, a history that's far greater than 2014, of course. And we owe an enormous debt, actually, to many of our Indian families who came to our country to join us in the 70s and are and remain an absolute delight. They worked harder than any of us. Their children were inevitably cleverer than ours because they worked harder and they were taught at home that you have to work hard if you aspire. They were almost part of the foundations of the Britain that we used to believe in. And they are so disheartened and disappointed by what migration has come to mean. And I found it too in Sweden, actually, in the no-go zones where they now have hand grenades on the streets and a white person cannot walk. The third generation migrants there are very disappointed and upset because they genuinely wanted to try to contribute and make a difference and feel that now all migrants equals bad. So my heart, I have a heart for those people, very much so, absolutely.
Well, that actually wasn't my question. What I wanted to say, though, is, my question is, I lost what you were saying about the girl getting on in Calais. Was she getting on?
I'm so sorry.
What her nationality was? Was she trying to get on a ferry to come across, to come to Hyde Park?
Canadian.
Okay, that.
Trying to get to, I don't know why she didn't fly, let's not go there. Canadian. She got as far as Calais in France. She was trying to get to Hyde Park, but they got her at Calais, got her off the bus, never let her into the country.
How did they pin her out so well like that? On a future possible, that's chilling, a future possible.
She was rejected from the UK on the basis of future hate speech, as yet unsaid, that might upset local communities.
How did they know she should be in this?
Oh no, she was known in some circles. They spot us fairly well. You remember Asia Bibi, the Christian lady? You know why we didn't take her in the UK, which is where she wanted to come? Because it might upset local communities. I thought we were a Christian country, but it might upset local communities. So we rejected a Christian woman who'd been persecuted for blasphemy. I mean,
I have one person ahead of you, the gentleman in the back.
My name is Tim Cutter. Not so much a question, but more of a statement, and perhaps, when you spoke to people that respond to the population density within your country of only being 5 to 10%. I think it's important for people to remember that in Germany in the late 1930s, only 7% of the population were considered to be Nazis. And look at where that led us.
good. It's a good point.
Sir?
My name is Gates. I'm an immigrant, and I'm heartbroken actually in America. I used to think Americans are very brave, but if you see conservatives, many conservatives are very afraid, even to wear this MAGA hats. They're very, very scared. And the left, very smart, very organized. They know what to do. They know how to come together and make things happen. Even the way they handle, I'm an immigrant and I live in an immigrant community. I know what's going on with Democrats and the immigrant community. But the conservatives are like, I don't know. We don't get together.
No.
We don't make things happen. And we are losing. And when we fought, I think last year, when the UConn professor was forcing students to say Allah Akbar or God is great, me and my friend went there because I have 2 daughters there. And we recorded everything, and Robert Spencer, when he came in and spoke, he helped me to edit the video and post it. And CNN, Fox News and many others picked it up except CNN and MSNBC. And the university professor was terminated. You know, we can do a lot of things, but we are scared and we don't get together and we don't help each other out and make progress. Even the other day, I used to go to CCSU, and there is this renowned professor, is a Jewish professor, but he is Palestinian. He goes against the Jew. I spoke, and I was booed. There were a lot of Muslim students, and there is no conservative. And where are the conservatives? They don't go to school, they don't invent, they don't create, they don't make things happen. This is very scary. We are losing it now. So what do you advise us, especially with the immigrant community? We can, even tomorrow, I'm asking if there are people. Tomorrow there is an immigrant pilgrim in West Hartford. There is a Muslim community going to present in a church, making art gallery, making food. Muslims, immigrants. We need to go there and say, show science, stop Islamization. There are many mosques opening in Hartford, many mosques opening in Connecticut, around Connecticut, at the speed of light, and we are not doing anything. So that's how Africa was conquered by Muslims. That's how Jordan, every Middle Eastern country used to be Christian and decimated by this systematic left wing. So the right wing is dead almost, I would say. But can we really revive?
Yes.
Can we really work beyond presentation, beyond life?
Yes, I know what you're saying, but I completely, no, not at all, thank you. I applaud you for having the courage to make that video that you made in the school, because that is a brave thing to do, because you're putting all sorts of things at risk there to do that. But the power of capturing the truth of our time, you cannot deny that. Your ability to take that moment and project it across the nation is exactly what we're trying to do. It's exactly what I try and do with my videos and my stuff that I get up to. Because if you just show people, even without my voice talking or my stupid face, I walk around Belgium in the market, just film the market. It's all Morocco. It's all Muslims. There's not one white person there. There's not one, it's not about colour either, but there's not one non-Muslim there. You can just show that video and people start to wake up. So I think what you're doing is right, but I also understand why people are scared. Because we need our jobs. People need, I don't have one, but people need jobs anymore. I had quite a few in the past. They were taken. People need to pay their mortgages, and that's the ultimate state control in the UK is that people need their homes. And by using the threat of a police force who are motivated by Muslim associations, by using the threat of imprisonment or removing your job. A firefighter was removed from his post the other day because he retweeted a tweet of mine. This is the level of suppression. And so, but the key thing is that we just keep this, we refuse to be silenced, and we prevail. And that's why I think these meetings in these rooms really do matter, because it's so lonely for people out there. And these meetings are like a little breath of fresh air, because even if we don't agree, it's still a moment to touch other people. People can now come talk to you about what you did. You can give people ideas, But to wear a MAGA hat, no, I understand why. Because, people throw stuff, right? We had a thing of milkshakes in the UK. I've had water thrown on me, whatever. People never realise, because they'll say, oh, it was only water. I can tell you, when the liquid lands, you don't think, oh, that's only water. Your first thought, especially if you live where I live, is acid. And people go, well, it was water. I challenge them to be that person, because I can tell you, in that instant it lands, you just believe it's acid. And I've been there. Yeah. Sorry, I'm blabbling on.
No, you're not.
I am.
Anyway, I have 3 or 4 questions in line, but first, Dr. Boston just wanted to share some sentiments. So.
Now, I was just thinking about an event that that occurred that really wasn't covered adequately. This was when the Imam Omar Suleiman actually gave the congressional invocation. Some things emerged about statements he'd made about Israel, but I just happened to go online. I was curious about who he was. And he had actually given a whole series of lectures, which are still online. That's the state of things. Detailed lectures about Quranic understandings of the Jews in the Quran itself and in the traditions of Muhammad. And he went into the most extensive discourse I've seen in anything like this on why the Jews are cursed in the Quran as apes and pigs. It's in the 5th surah chapter of the Quran, the 60th verse. And he went on to say that, just in great detail about this, he went on to say that, when Muslims now can refer to the Jews as sons of apes and pigs, that's actually incorrect. They can be referred to as brothers of apes and pigs, and he was just going on and on, and the reason is because Muhammad referred to the Jews as brothers, not sons, brothers of apes and pigs, before he orchestrated their mass slaughter, one of the tribes. Again, this is all, the Muslim narrative. None of this has any historical confirmation, but it's what Muslims are taught and what they believe. And I was thinking to myself, I wrote about it, I put it out to some, a blog and a conservative outlet, and it wound up getting published in Israel. But 5 years ago, Katie, this would have been a headline in New York area tabloids. Apes and pigs imam addresses Congress. Unnoticed, not picked up. A few of his negative statements, predictably, about Israel. That's it. And it's a little bit disconcerting to me that the discourse is getting worse and worse and worse and more censored. Katie and I were having some conversations about what's going on at Fox News. Fox News, again, within the past 5 years, would have some candid discussions, panel discussions, group discussions. It's verboten now. You cannot talk about it. And again, that's why I found Katie's documentary so refreshing, obviously, the things that she said tonight. But we have to get this back into the public discourse. Again, this imam was not only speaking before Congress, those sermons have been up since, I think they were originally published in 2012 or 2013. They're still sitting there. They're meant to be an instructional tool for Muslims. And we have to get our politicians to consider these things, especially given the fact that this man was granted the privilege to give an opening prayer before Congress. And I'm glad that certain congressmen are condemning certain statements of Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, but they're not dealing with the core cultural and religious issue that's confronting us. Where do they get their belief system from? Unfortunately, they get it from Islam. And this obviously this is a conundrum. We're a country built upon religious freedom. But what if a religion is more a political ideology than a religion? How do we deal with that? And again, the fact that this man literally addressed Congress and no one was talking about his open, it wasn't just condemnation. It was a discussion about why it's still a valid view to have of Jews. And of course, it's because of their innate perfidiousness. In other words, that's why the original curse took place. And the other thing that it ties into is that Muslims repeat 17 times a day the opening prayer of the Quran called the Fatiha. And in that prayer, is a condemnation of Christians and Jews, Jews who've incurred Allah's anger, Christians who've gone astray. And this is repeated 17 times a day. It's repeated at military funerals. And, you know, I've tried to raise this issue that, well, you know, so the first 6 verses of the Fatiha don't mention anybody. They, you know, praise to Allah, it's more universal, whatever it is. Couldn't the first 6 verses be repeated at a funeral where there may be non-Muslims present, and eliminate the 7th verse, which is this curse, and the curse itself is tied in again for the Jews to the notion that they're apes and pigs, and to the Christians having gone astray and practiced a false religion, and etc. So these are the kinds of things that I think we have to rationally reintroduce into the public discourse. We can't allow these things to be that are provable, that are demonstrable, that are textual, to be completely eliminated from the public discourse.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
I have a question.
From the Texan over there. With the British accent.
I married one, that's fine. But would you agree with the proposition that Islam has only been stopped by superior military force?
I think obviously, you know, historically, when you look at the confrontation, particularly between Christendom and Islam, obviously that's true, and there's been ebbs and flows. But there have been other civilizations that have resisted Islam, particularly Hindu civilization, at great cost. There was a conquering civilization that was obliterating Islam, the Mongols, and then they converted to Islam. So, but yes, I mean because the nature of Islamic conquest is so aggressive, even if it's not employing violence in terms of, you know, jihad wars, etc. It employs the threat of violence. So yes, but I think Katie gave the example of Hungary and Poland. Both of those countries, by the way, I think the reason they react so viscerally is because they have a history. It's not well known to many Westerners any longer. But, you know, Poland suffered terrible depredations from the Tatar Muslims, and obviously Hungary was victim of Ottoman conquests, etc. So they have a historical memory of these things. But the methods that they're employing now certainly are not violent. They're trying to control immigration. That's not an act of violence per se. So obviously, I think education, having courageous discourse, are other means to repel this threat. Yes, for me, for Katie.
Yeah, so actually, for you first, Doctor, and then for Katie, if you want to chime in. My name's Brian, by the way. Just kind of curious, where do you guys see people who are fleeing? You mentioned Poland, Hungary, America possibly. What are like the top 2-3 places you see them running to and why? And then also, is there any conversation, dialogue taking place? You talk about the Christian folks, people outside that ilk, so Wiccans, Hindus, you just mentioned, people like that, trying to embrace them as a
Yeah, I mean, I think there are again many cultures that have suffered from the jihad, and it's very difficult to bring them together. You see sort of ad hoc relationships. India had such a strong left to communist orientation in its politics for so many years, but it's reversing that, and so now you see a more natural alliance between Israel and India, between India and the United States. So some of those things, some of those dynamics are changing, but there's one of the things that the imposition of the Shariah did very effectively is divide up non-Muslim communities, particularly Christians and Jews, were the internecine hatreds were inflamed by the Muslim conquerors, and they were very effective at that. And some of those tactics are obviously still being used. And then there's this long-standing alliance between the left and Islam. There's a striking concordance between the Muslim profession of faith. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. Well, the original Marxists said there is no God, and Karl Marx is his prophet. I thought that was a joke, but that was actually the profession of the German and the British Marxist policies even before the Bolshevik Revolution. So they're strange bedfellows in one sense, but they have a shared totalitarian vision. And of course, we've seen historical examples like in Iran when the theocracy was restored. I mean, Iran, after all, was a theocracy from basically 1502 to 1925, and there was that hiatus period of some secularization with the Khomeini so-called revolution. He sought an alliance and got an alliance with the communists because the Shahs had cracked down, the Pahlavi Shahs had cracked down on the communists and the traditional theocratic Muslims. But Khomeini went after them as soon as he assumed power. So the alliance won't last.
She's got about 6 questions. So thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bostrom. Katie, you got about 6 questions.
Boom.
Starting with the gentleman over there,
We'll do
John.
quick fire.
I'm waiting for my name is John. I'm waiting for the discussion of whether or not Islam is a religion or a war.
Is Islam a religion or a war plan?
I think the evidence is clear. And as long as we treat it as a religion, we pay the price.
Yes, and I guess that's why I think when I do Homeland's documentary, not to bang on about it, but very carefully making it not about religion, actually. Not actually alluding to the fact it's a war plan either, but pointing very clearly that this isn't about religion, this is about the systematic takeover of our countries and the persecution of all others within them. And I still believe that. My big question on Islam is, if Islam is so bloody fantastic, why do Muslims always come to Christian countries? Go to an Islamic country. Why come to a Christian country and impose your Islam on us? It does my head in. Yes.
Hi, again, Cassie. I had a question for him too, but he saw me coming in with Iran. You're back, good. Just to kind of go back, I try to keep track of different towns and cities in different countries and stuff. You mentioned Birmingham, and then there's Tommy's hometown, and you mentioned
Rotherham.
Are these, the BBC and our own media keep a tight lid on things? Is there any way we can get through and keep track of what is happening in these tiny towns?
Yeah, I guess, by looking at alternative broadcasts is the only way to stick with it. And that's why I spend a lot of time in towns and cities in the UK, on the streets. Did a 2-day thing on Bradford, it's on YouTube, showing Bradford, B-R-A-D, Brad, F-O-R-D. So if you Google Katie Hopkins Bradford, there's a 2-day kind of documentary of Bradford, the heart of Bradford. And basically, Bradford is a drug city run by drugs, fueled by drugs, and white girls are being mass raped by Muslims who peddle the drugs there.
Now,
I'm going to keep going because of the questions and the time.
Yeah,
I'm really sorry. We'll chat after.
Gentleman right there.
Yeah.
This has been going on for a long time. It's not like it started, within the last few years with the influx.
No.
Now, I'm from Maryville, Indiana. I flew in here. And in the 70s, when I was going through basic and AIT in the Army, they taught us about the Hindus, the Buddhists, who was our friend, who wasn't friendly to the U.S., and Muslims right there in the 70s was not a friend of the United States. Now, we had a TV newscast on the radio, Warren Fiber. He used to talk about the Muslims. And Louis Farrakhan, I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Of course.
Yeah, a very dangerous person. But he had an army of like 5,000 strong, was the latest we heard. Now this is back in the 70s.
And your question that you're going to is?
Oh yeah, I'm just, my thing is, I've talked to a lot of people about it, but it doesn't seem like anybody wants to get involved unless something happens to them.
And then they forget. 9/11 was so many years ago and nobody even cares anymore. Sir?
Sure, so I just wanted to address this gentleman's point over here about people being reluctant to speak up in the public square. The public square is ours. In Warwick, we, after the left came in and wanted to turn Warwick, this is Warwick, New York, wanted to turn Warwick into a sanctuary town. We got involved and we started a series of public forums we call Common Sense Warwick, where we have a strong moderator and we invite the left and the right. We show a 5-minute video on whatever the topic, Second Amendment, immigration, and then it's moderated. They cannot compete in the public square. They cannot compete in, as Rush puts it, the arena of ideas. But you got to get out and do that. You got to organize those things.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, you had a question.
Yeah, I'll try and speak loudly because I have a soft voice, but Dr. Bascom touched on a subject that's been a concern of mine for a while, knowing a little something about history. With Iran, the communists teamed up with the Islamists to overthrow the Shah, and once that was accomplished, the communists, of course, figured they'd be in power and they were all executed. In this country, and I don't know if it's true in the UK, but in this country, we have a similar situation where you have the Bernie Sanders and the de Blasios and the rest of them, that really are hardcore communists, giving us the political correctness that we must adhere to and setting the stage, supporting the Islamists in this country.
Yeah.
And my fear is, what happens at some point? Are they going to clash? Or, will it be like Iran? And you have such a perceptive analysis talent. Where do you see this?
So for the UK, the Islamists win. Islamists win, Christians move out, Jewish people have already long gone. They say, you should always watch a Jewish family because they're the first sign of trouble, like a canary in a mine. I apologise if that's crass. That's what I think will happen. The Islamists already have the UK. We did a terrible thing because we thought like mayoral positions, city councils, they don't matter. I tell you what, little by little, every single one of our mayoral and city council positions has been taken over, which means the funding is controlled by the Muslims, and it means the police go there. So we did a silly thing and we turned away and we thought things didn't matter. So Islamists will take the UK. We will move, eastwards to Hungary and Poland. So as they have come, so we will bounce onwards, and that's why this fight is now on, because we've gone. Paris will go, is gone. Germany's on its way. So that's why America will be where we call on to make America. South Africans are moving to Cape Town in their heads for this last stand. That's how they see themselves pulling back to the ocean. I think the last stand is America for the rest of us. I'm not saying I'm coming to your country, and I promise to work hard and I'll pay taxes if I do. And I promise not to come up via the south or Macallan.
By the way, has anybody thought of what happens when the Islamics take over a country and that country has nuclear weapons?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've thought a lot about that, sure.
I'd be more worried about the trash. Those guys really leave trash on the road. Seriously. The Muslims really have this thing, and I don't wish to generalize, but I'm going to be obliged to. Anything inside their front door is perfection and pristine. They take their shoes off. I've been to many homes. It's quite tidy and immaculate. They are very protective about their internal space. The minute you step outside that door, the second you go outside, it doesn't matter. Trash is dropped in the street. And it's one of the things that also strikes me here, driving around your beautiful homes and the way you keep them. We don't have that anymore in the UK. We're just a trash heap. I mean, I'm sorry for the language. Trump called them shithole countries, really. He's on the money. Who had the hand up? Sorry, I think I'm ignoring people.
Quick question.
Sorry.
The birth rate,
Oh.
difference in birth rate.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of these countries have a minority of immigrants living there,
Oh.
birth rate is considerably different.
Oh, totally. 2035.
Right, so through attrition, eventually, it's a losing battle.
Oh, we're already gone. Yeah, so Birmingham, we're already more Muslim births than any others. By 2035, Muslim births outnumber any other in the rest of the UK. 2035. What are we? 2019. It's very close. It sounds far, but it's very close. And then we just had a situation now, we're rapidly running out of school places. So we had the first school this year, thank you, the first school this year to run out of school places, physically run out of school places because the Muslim population is so great. There are no school places in the whole of the district for senior school kids. There are parents who have no place to send their British kids because all the spaces had to go to the minorities first. We are running out of school places. Next year it gets worse. So that's where schools and healthcare is where that pinch starts to happen. And with Medicaid, that's where they're coming in for your Medicare now.
Quick questions now.
Okay, quick answers
Ma'am?
is what you want.
Right, both. Yes.
Yes, you.
Please stand right up and.
Hi, my name's Valerie. We have a lot in common. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm a white conservative, and I'm not afraid. So my question is, in addressing this gentleman here, I have children that are in inner city schools in the state, and they know to let me know once this Islam education starts working its way into our kids' schools. So do you think that we're close to that happening?
No.
It's done.
We're going to be all over it.
Yes, that's good. Yes, be all over it, be on top of it, be right there. When it's a mosque trip, fine. But, I have if they've had one mosque trip, mine don't go on another trip until they've been to the synagogue, until they've been to the church. I have basic rules.
I know that's coming,
Yeah.
so I'm ready. And
It's not coming, it's already happened.
It's
In
come.
fact, the Saudis have paid.
But it's
No,
good.
but listen, the Saudis have basically funded the textbooks, and they've seized control of this, even through Common Core.
You're doing
Yes.
the right thing.
Marie?
I just want to mention
Oh.
one other thing.
Yes, ma'am.
I am working with a group of conservative patriots, and we're planning a march in front of CARE headquarters in Philadelphia on August 3rd at 1 p.m.
Good on you. Well done. Good girl. Good. Well done, you.
Marie?
It's going to be in front of the CARE headquarters in Philadelphia.
I'm a teacher, a hard teacher.
Yes. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry. Carry on, ma'am. Sorry, I can't hear.
I'm a teacher, a Hartford teacher, and people got together and did get rid of a lot of the Common Core, so people can.
Thank
yes,
you.
yes, you're right.
Marie?
No, I just want to tell everybody here, let's not forget about the mosques that are proliferating our area. They're barracks. And what we have to be careful of, and a lot of people don't know about this, I happen to be in real estate, I'm in commercial real estate. And I was trying to help Beth Van Dyne from Texas. You've heard the name. She was having a lot of trouble trying to stop mosques. There is a law, it's called RLUIPA, and it's like the real estate land use. You cannot turn down a religious organization for buying a piece of property no matter what. But there is a way around it. And if each one of you in your municipalities, you should realize that in the mosques, there are people standing shoulder to shoulder. So you have more people per square foot than you would have. In 1,000 square feet, you can fit 96 men in a prostrate position, bending over. And in a church, there's zoning regulation. In the synagogue, they have furniture, they have aisle space, and the regulations for parking is very different. You need a higher parking ratio in a mosque. You should discuss with your planners and your municipalities about the possibility of mosques coming in, and they have to change the ruling for zoning for those type of facilities before they're approached, because you're dead meat otherwise, because you're going to be forced to actually have the mosque. And I just wanted to
She's
that.
good news.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Marie.
very cool.
Really, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Jude McNeil, and I'd like to know if tourism is being, like Paris, London, maybe even Sweden, is being affected.
Yes. Yes, so two weird things. One, Sweden. People will say, well, I went to Sweden, it was fine. I went to Sweden and it was fine. No, you went to the central street in Stockholm where they policed and allowed you to go inside of the jihadi bollards, and then you were okay. So when you hear that, I went there and it was fine, that really, that sends me crazy, because you go 4 subway stops out and you'll be removed for being white, removed. Is tourism being affected? Yes, because people ask me all the time, is it safe to go to London? And if people are asking you if it's safe to go to London, they're already worrying about it. And if they're worrying about it, they're booking somewhere else. And our restaurants are taking a hit. Our tourism is taking a hit. And Sadiq Khan, of course, can't say a word because he just stands around and says there's no problem. We're the most tolerant city on the planet. I mean, please.
Katie.
Hey!
I was wondering, if the ultimate goal is a Luciferian one world order, why is there such a push for the Islamization all over the Western world?
Why do we get into bed?
The goal is a new world order.
Worldwide caliphate.
Yeah, I suppose for me, the only thing I see is that people, and this is so that's like a big whoo level, yeah. And what I see is at this level, whoop, where I am, people do better, profit more, get higher up the greasy pole, get more money, stay in their job if they get in bed with Islam. And that's what they do.
But how does it fit in with the whole agenda?
They're the weapon.
I've got no answer for you.
And by
All
the
I
way,
know is
what
that you
they're
do
doing-
better if you're in bed with Islam.
I'm sorry, Katie.
No, you're fine.
What they're doing is they're seizing control of the discourse. And now you have mega churches across the country that are moving in the direction called something called Chrislam. I mean, think about it. Sure. And they're saying, hey, it's the same God we could worship. And they're
Oh, I
surrendering.
can't bear it. All this interfaith
surrendering.
baloney. I can't bear the interfaithers. Any interfaithers, ugh, can't bear it. Don't tell me about Jesus.
Yeah, I just want to say that it's here and it's strong in Connecticut, and there are towns such as the one I live in where the Islamic group, it's the Brotherhood, purchased like a compound that has been idling low for a long time. They purchased it at a song, and they're actually, what they say is, it's going to be a boys' school for teaching the Quran. So, a lot of the people are fooled because, as you say, they don't want to be named. And then there's people in town who are fighting against this
Yeah.
and watching it now. But we have to be aware. And the question I have about this, does anybody know if anyone's working on this and keeping track more of these little
Mosques popping
towns
out.
across the country?
Not our
They're
government.
seeking, it's like under the radar.
Katie, do you know this guy, Gavin Hopkins?
I don't know if
Oh, I know
you
who
probably
you mean.
didn't attend, but we had
Yeah,
a
but-
session. Jane hosted
Okay,
it
I don't know,
last
he's a
year.
lawyer, I don't
No.
Uh,
Not successful.
Dave Garbutz came.
Yes,
And he went out and investigated something like 17 or 18 mosques over the course of a week. And every one of them in the state was tainted. The worst one was the Islamic Center in New London, which is down in Groton. You can't imagine. And one of the things we didn't touch on tonight, of course, time's limited, the Green-Red Alliance. And I got to tell you, there are a lot of politicians in this state, people like Chris Murphy and others, that are in bed with both Islam, the Muslim Brotherhood-linked organizations, and the Communist Party of the United States of America.
That's what I was
So those are our enemies, folks.
Who
Anyway,
is?
that gentleman back there in the blue shirt had a question.
Yeah, just a basic observation, correct me if I'm wrong, but Islam is a philosophy,
You're good. An ideology, yeah.
a stateless
Mm.
mass that a lot of people don't want. It has no head. It wins by using the laws against you. It feeds the popular vote, the most needy, give them money, vote for me. Pretty hard to kill something that's headless. In theory, if you had to pick one geopolitical entity that the military could move against, who would it be?
Iran.
Pick one.
Pakistan.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I've got
Good one, Captain.
Okay, two things, big answer and a little answer. My big answer is geopolitically, I think Pakistan. And the reason I say that is because of, it's a very British bias, I see, but the takeover of my country seems to be fueled by Pakistan and Pakistani funding, from what I see. And also, I suppose, at a social, sexual level, it's Pakistani Muslim men that are raping our girls. So that, at a more, at the other end of the spectrum from geopolitical, who would I take out first? If you ever have to wonder about the sophistication of the cultures that we're battling, please do come to London with me at an Italian restaurant and watch a woman in a full burqa eat a plate of spaghetti bolognese. Because I can tell you, it's that lets you know that somewhere we're going to win. Because we eat spaghetti bolognese well. With a full face covering, plate of spaghetti bolognese, you've got 4 hours right there. So that's the two spectrums, geopolitical and spaghetti bolognese in a burqa. No.
You said America is the whole of Europe.
Yeah.
Let's turn it around. For America.
Oh, totally.
Elaine.
That's why I'm on the road.
Elaine, go ahead.
First of all, I love the killing fields. I saw your documentary.
Thank you.
It was excellent. Mentioning Pakistan, it made me wonder about Obama. When he finally went after Osama bin Laden, my personal feeling, and I'd rather know yours, is that because 1,000 people knew where Osama bin Laden was, he reluctantly decided to have him taken out. That's just what I think. I would be curious to know why you feel he did take out Osama bin Laden, and if you feel he really didn't want to do that.
No, I don't really. I wouldn't have a coherent answer on that, other than it comes to a point where he felt he had to do something. Yeah, I would say that's probably correct, which is slightly terrifying in itself. Yeah. Yeah.
Jake, we got to head.
We need to.
We're out
Oh
of
yeah,
time.
you go.
Anyway, two things I want to bring up. This is the painful end, the painful element of being up here, but this is the ask. Once again, Jane personally has funded these events, and if there's anything you could do to make a contribution to help her, it would be greatly appreciated if you haven't done so already. The other thing is, before you go out the door, there are brochures in the back. Frank, you've got them, right? Okay. I got out of counterterrorism in the summer of 2016. Some of you know that. I launched an organization to help children who lost their parents in service to country, both law enforcement and military. I have struggled ever since. It's an all-encompassing 12-month program we put together to mentor them, to help them, because through no fault of their own, of course, they've suffered, their families have suffered. And we want to host a pilot program this summer for 6 of them, which will be recorded, and we're going to release in support of a national fundraising campaign. Everything that has taken place to date, my wife and I have contributed to the tune of about $40,000. Anyway, we're short $7,500 for the pilot program. I'm not asking anybody for that, but if you'd like to step up to the plate and at least join the organization, help us help these kids. Because I can't overemphasize something. Look around you, folks. Do you see anybody in this room under 40? If there are, they can't, okay. Thank you for joining us. There aren't many. And you know what? We're all here. We're worried about our countries. But who's going to be responsible for the United States in the next 10, 15 years? They're going to be today's teenagers who are fallen victim to a socialist agenda in their schools. They're being brainwashed, just like you said. They're not having an opportunity to think. There's no dialogue. There's no debate. It's the administration's way or the highway. I'm trying to get to these children to help mentor them into the next generation of responsible citizens. Please take a brochure, sign up and help me. I can't do it much longer alone. The other thing I wanted to say is I'd love to have a bunch of people step up to the plate as warriors to help me get this done, because they are our future. And thank you, everybody, for being here tonight.